Hello, everybody, and welcome back to day 12 of 28 Days to Master Level Chess Tactics. Today, we're going through the final test of Decoy. I'm going to give you two test positions, kind of bringing it back to basics, just to test your knowledge of Decoy, as well as, of course, more thought process practice. As you notice, I'm giving a lot of positions in this course that are basic to intermediate, less advanced because they happen less often, but basically the repetition is necessary to be able to actually apply the thought process. And so that's why in this course we're just basically giving multiple examples, giving multiple scenarios, and let's get into this. So this is white to move if you want to pause the video now. Alright, so in this first position, you'll notice that material is otherwise equal. The position looks like it's rather tense with both the kings trying to come into the center. We're in an endgame with a lot of heavy pieces, both the rooks and knights, so otherwise materially equal. But in this position, when you see a materially equal position, you have to look through concrete moves, checks, captures, and threats in order to see if you have a concrete tactical advantage. So ironically in this position, white actually has a check. He has basically two checks. Knight takes here and knight to d6 will be the moves that you would look at. And actually in this position, knight to d6, it looks like if the rook takes, this rook is actually protected by the knight. But you bring another piece into the attack with knight to c4, and even if black takes, rook takes and then rook check, then he can't bring his rook, it's undefended on e6, and his king can't come in to defend it. So he'd have to step to the side, and then you've won an exchange. And actually, given the position with the knight on d6, it has a lot of threats. The rook can come in, so it'd actually be a very easily winning endgame. All right, so let's look at another move. Now, you really, in this position, the reason I chose it was because you need to look in your calculations at rook takes e7 check, and you need to notice that if the knight takes, and this is actually a thing that I missed initially, so if the knight takes, you can't actually go knight to c4 because now the rook can just take here. So you need to have a correct visualization as well in this position. Those kind of in-between moves, and especially those backwards moves, can sometimes leave a piece that you thought was trapped, in this case the rook on d6, but actually it's not after the piece recaptures. That's a very common error that I've seen in my own games and in players that even play in long tournament control games. They start sitting there, they go through their thought process, they calculate a lot of variations, and when they look at these kind of variations, they get confused and they start to see ghosts and they miss moves like that knight takes e7. Alright, so let's move on to position 2 here. In this position, it's black to move, and you can pause the video now. The very interesting thing about this position is that it's something that would commonly occur, I think, in a lot of 1800 to 2200 games, because it's kind of a tactic that you would miss by just playing normal moves. For example, it looks like black took here, and it's otherwise equal with the material and the pawns, and with two bishops, and both players have active pieces. White has these pawns here. But of course, you need to always look at the concrete moves. And this is kind of a, I would say, 2000 to 2200 level tactic. Because in this position, you'd look at bishop takes and rook takes, as well as you notice this kind of discovery, which doesn't work now because the bishop would just take the queen. But in a few moves, we'll see what happens. So actually, the rook takes on d2, and now the queen can't take. But once the rook takes, if you just take here and the queen takes, you don't actually have this discovery. But ironically, bishop to e3, a check. Now, of course, he doesn't want to play rook here. He has one move. And now you can take. And after queen takes, you hit the queen with e3. So basically, you decoyed that queen in the end of the variation, which is about a 4-move variation to the d2 square. You play e3. And now the point is, if bishop takes, you actually take with check, and now you have a double attack on the king with check, and on the queen with the e3 pawn. So if the queen probably would just go here, you take, and now you're up an entire bishop, and you're going to win a pawn. And if the king moved, then you would just take, and actually it's probably even more winning for black because he has this passed pawn, and he can bring the rook in to protect it. He can win more pawns. These pawns are going to become more easily attacked because they're pretty advanced. So this is a very interesting higher level decoy with that intermediate check. And, you know, it's something that you'd miss when you're not looking accurately in your calculations. All right, so this concludes the final day of day 12 of decoy. And tomorrow we're going to move on to demolition of pawn structure. Don't fret if you got the solution wrong. There will be another time.